As promised, welcome to WestEdge Wednesdays, a video recap for everyone who either was at WestEdge Design Fair back in November of 2024. I promised that if you love these panels, which I hope you do, that you didn't have to take notes because I was going to replay them in their entirety, or for those who couldn't make it, now you can. The first episode of WestEdge Wednesday, this one is a prologue. So I'm going to play a little clip from a bunch of most of our panels so that you get a feel for what was happening, what we were talking about, and you can see it. And then in subsequent weeks, we're going to play all of our panels, all 9, in their entirety. The programming at WestEdge this year was on a stage designed by Julie Berline of JKB Home Design. Love the space. I think you will too. And the theater at WestEdge was presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, and an absolutely remarkable partner for the design and architecture industry. So if you're in the industry, if you're in the trade, check the show notes for links to Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, because they're great partners. And with that, first up, we're going to go to authenticity versus dupes. Pretty cool. This one was moderated by Kelly Badal Phillips. This was moderated by Kelly Phillips Badal of Lux Interiors and Design, and it features Jen Sampson of Jen Sampson Design, Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs, Candace Quinn of London Pierce Designs, and William Zhang of MTech. I think you're going to enjoy this. Check it out.
But whether you're kind of ripping off another design, a specific design, especially like an iconic design, for example, I feel like everyone's probably heard of the case of the Donald Judd Foundation going after Clements Design here in LA, who had done a similar table to one of Donald Judd's, very classic designs for Kim Kardashian's skin offices, also here in LA. And one of the reasons it became a problem is because Kim herself got on social media and called it a Donald Judd table when it was actually a custom piece done in the style of Donald Judd. And since this court case has been around for a minute, I just have to add that I looked up exactly where this case was, and It's been delayed and all over the place. And perhaps we'll see a real update soon, but what the countersuit that currently is out there right now is that the Clements have said that the Judd Foundation is suing for publicity and attempting to, quote, stifle competition in the market, prevent other designers from creating their own wooden tables, and claim minimalism as their own. Now, minimalism as something, like, that's a harder thing to slap a copyright or a trademark or a standard look onto. So I'd say, let's discuss, how much responsibility does a designer have in changing something? Because there really isn't a rule per se, if you change it 20% or 30%, that's a very arbitrary rule. What responsibility does a designer have, both to either not copy things, to educate their client, to come up with their own designs? Jen, what do you think?
I absolutely think it's the designer's responsibility to inform their client of what they're presenting, whether that, and then in terms of how much tweaking we might do, right? We're pulling inspiration from everywhere all the time. So whether it's that table, whether it's art, travel, other pieces of furniture, we're constantly pulling inspiration. It's in our back pocket, and then it comes to the time to create something specific for a client. So we do that, and in that process, there are pieces of what we're creating that are pulled from other designers, obviously, right? I mean, I am a believer in the sense that, what's the saying? Copying is the greatest source of flattery, or something like that, right? There's a saying like that, and I think there is truth to that to an extent, but in terms of furniture design or redesign or creating something for a client, I think if you come up with something that's that similar, like what you were saying, there's a lot of questions there. Are you then diluting the value of the amazing piece that it, started as? And then also you have to honor that. And I think that you do have to say, inspired by. We created, this is a, JSD piece that was inspired by the iconic whatever. So I think honestly, and transparency in that is important. I really do. So that's kind of where I sit with it.
Kim, you want to add more to this?
I guess. I mean, it really just feels like you have, number one, you have to be responsible and know that you've copied something and that you could relate it. But getting into also styles, like right now plaid is really big or this is really big or whatever, and you end up kind of following through what everyone is also doing, and you sort of also look at fashion, and you're so inspired by so many things, and you have a client. So when you start adding the client to the mix, and then the client has their own opinions, and they really want that chair that they just saw on the cover of Architectural Digest, and they don't have the money, do you say no?
Well, that's, yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's,
Or
That
do you
happens
offer an
all
and
the
that's
time.
actually a good point,
Right?
too. I mean, trends are real,
Yes.
right? So, I mean, I'm thinking about the Mario Bellini, right? The
Yes.
Camaleonda. So
Yes.
that was first, it reappeared on the scene. I think it was, what's the designer who put it in her store? Stella McCartney. That's where it kind of reappeared.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you were seeing it, Athena Calderon and Kelly Worsley. All of a sudden it was just popping up everywhere, right? And people inevitably see that. They want it. All of a sudden it's becoming
Yes.
something that's in their, and the next thing you know, they want that. And so to your point, you have a client who says, so then I would try to push the vintage or the antique, truthfully. Like I would really try to make that happen. Because that is a big part of it. I mean, people
Yeah.
they want what they see, right? They follow the trends. People who are design-minded don't always have the ability to purchase the original, so that's where it does get tricky. I mean, that's another piece that's, out there in a very big way, being reproduced on a mass scale. So
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe the thing is the mass scale nature of it, right?
that's the problem.
You know what I'm saying? Because then if it becomes that, say I'm designing something and I've copied it dead right, I've copied his knobs, and then I just want to, and I'm not saying it's inspired by, but I've just taken off with it, but now I'm selling it. I mean, that's a whole other ball game, right? But is that even fair to be able to say that that's that much different, or is that fair even? Is it fine for me to copy your knobs and stick them inside of my kitchen or whatever?
No.
Do you think Kim could copy your knobs as easily? Sorry, every time we say knobs, I have a little Sorry, Will.
We made the mistake of meeting earlier, and it was a bit of a banter, and so
We're just trolling you at this point.
I'm trolling you.
No, I appreciate it. For sure.
He's like, I can handle this.
But actually, something we talked about that was really interesting is a knob is what is it, right? It has to do certain things. Like it has to be able to turn, it has to hold a human hand, right? Like, oh, you're still there. I got it, yeah.
No one's allowed to say knob anymore.
So in other words, if you have, I'm serious, like the same thing with a chair will always be 18 inches off the ground. It generally has the 4 legs through this. And then how far can you go to design a unique chair, or even, your knobs are great though.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And our knobs are great. That is the challenge, is that, everything has been done. You always hear that design is dead.
Right, right?
But even with the challenges, I think there is a lot to be said about being original with ideas, bringing new ideas. You don't have to look at other, products in the same category for inspiration.
Right, exactly.
For
Yes,
example,
like fashion, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always looking at fashion or furniture. There's still a lot of options and things that haven't been done, I guess.
Like organic inspiration, you're
Yeah.
saying. Like, in other words, you're just looking at something and you don't have your glasses on and you think that it's one thing and you're like, oh my God, that'd be a great, fabric or something if you're looking at, or you're tripping.
Kim, do you lose your glasses sometimes?
What? I lose my glasses a lot, but I have
You're
dupes.
like, I'm just looking through blurred
No, I'm
eyes.
a caddis, I know,
can't
right?
decide.
Well, no, I'm saying that, how sometimes you're looking at something and you sort of go like, that would actually be like this. This is a cute little bowl. It'd make really good pumpkin pie. So, right? So then you could just, now if I change the name of that and say that this is now a pan for pumpkin pie, does that it now change the name? But I can also put, I don't know.
That could be a knob.
Right? It could be a knob. That's a
Right.
big-ass knob.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it'd be good for like turning a boat.
It actually really begs the question that, you know, it's
No,
the
but you're
counterpoint
right.
of this.
You know what he's saying is that, in other words, that shape. So you're looking at this and you're thinking, I could do a ridged knob.
Yeah, we're designing here. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, right. Sorry. There's a brand new line now.
For
done
the
by
record,
hand.
I see coffee filters.
See
when I
coffee
look at those,
filters.
too.
Very good. So if you change the name of it, now it's a coffee filter. Coffee filter.
Well, and that brings us very beautifully to our next point, too,
I knew
which is,
that.
you know, the counterpoint to all this is that, yeah, if everything is derivative,
Right.
what is new? Like, how are we defining what's new or original? I don't have a good answer for that. What do you guys think?
Next up, small space, big style, the ADU revolution. It's everywhere, and it's getting more popular. Small living is gaining in popularity, and here's what some of the absolute best in the business have to say about it. This panel was moderated by Francis Anderton and featured Joan Barton of Dirty Girl Construction, Marcos Santa Anna of Alloy, Aiji Ryu of ARA LA Studio.
I know
Enjoy.
I can squeeze you into pretty small space, but there's rules about things. There's other rules too, though. I mean, there's all sorts. There's rule now where everybody has to have solar if it's new construction. Although there are exemptions, and I have studied those, and we're getting them. But there's a lot of things that go into what does it mean to live in an ADU, and some of those restrictions or codes are more restrictive than they are in the main house. And so if you don't know what you're getting into, if you think you're just going to convert your garage into a place that you can sleep legally, it's not going to happen. That's not how it works.
Right. It could if you don't go to the city.
Yes. You could have an illegal granny flat with no grannies in it, and you're back. Yeah, I mean, you could go sleep in your garage. Nobody's going to stop you.
Marco.
Yeah, so the least expensive ADU is going to be the garage conversion, where most garages are a little bit under 400 square feet, so that's going to be the least expensive way. But like AG was saying, you can't just, you're going to have to reconstruct most of it. That's the issue. So again, I go back to the whole 1940s world. Most homes are built in that area, you know, some up to like 1910 or so. But if it's under like 1930, just destroy the house, destroy the garage and start over, you know. Between ideally 40 and up, there's a potential to rehab.
Between 1940 and up.
Yeah, 1940 and
Yes,
up,
okay.
yeah. Usually that's where, even for houses too, if you buy a house, try to buy a house 1940 and newer, ideally. That's when the concrete is much better. If you go, if you go earlier, oftentimes you'll find the foundation is made of wood, which is silly, or at least like the cripple wall is made out of wood and there's like a little bit of concrete below. So that's the key when you're looking at houses. But as far as the garage conversions, if it is 1940 and younger, then you're still going to have to underpin the foundations. Back then, they didn't have the shear lateral forces for earthquakes was all built into the stucco. So the stucco became the shear panel in an earthquake event. So you're going to have to strip the stucco. You're going to have to add hold downs, steel pieces in the corners. You're going to have to add plywood. So by the time it's said and done, you're going to be stripping the finishes. You're going to be slicing holes in the concrete slab. So in some cases, you'll only have one little piece of concrete in the center of the 400 square foot garage. So that's, and now you have this old piece of concrete that, so anyway, so just long and short of it is, that is the least expensive, but still it doesn't really give you the bang for your buck that you're hoping for. So, bang for your buck, you build new kind of thing.
How many of you have clients that, look very sad after they've heard all of this and say, perhaps I won't do this?
I think if you explain to them how much money they're going to get back, if you know that formula and you know what that outlook looks like, then it becomes a doable conversation. The upside is bigger than the downside.
Right.
But you have to prepare them for the initial, I don't want to call it the downside. You have to prepare everybody for reality and then talk about ROI, return on investment. You have to actually have that conversation and know what those numbers look like in order to, I don't want to say sell the idea, but make sure that people are getting into something that they can afford to do, that they know will recoup in X amount of years, so that they are making a good decision and they're not, putting all their money into something that's going to get them into a place where they can't stay in their home. It's an investment, and you have to be willing to come to the table with some knowledge behind that to help people out.
Yeah, you could just look on Zillow or Redfin or whatnot and see what is the price per square foot of the house as it's being sold. And so you can always do the back calculation of how much am I going to spend on the construction costs plus the design, et cetera. Even if it doesn't exactly balance out, historically in LA, the equity is just doubling and sometimes over 4 or 8 years, et cetera. So you do have to look, is it a long-term investment? Or is it something you're going to just build and you want to sell the whole place? But that brings up another new law that just came out, which is they call it like the ADU condo law. So essentially now the state allows it, but they're allowing each local jurisdiction to make their own ordinances to try to figure out how the process goes. So for example, let's say you buy a house, you build an ADU in your backyard. Let's say it's $800,000 for the ADU. You can now sell the ADU to somebody.
So you can split the lot.
No, that's a separate world we could talk about. But this
SB9.
law, that's the SB9. But the ADU quote-unquote condo law, you don't have to split the lot. So you can actually just sell the house, and then you have created an HOA and the whole kind of thing.
I see.
It's an equity share, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's an equity share.
Huh, that's
So I don't think the city of LA has their ordinance ready yet, but maybe someone out here knows. But the state allows it as of this year. So that right there, if you instantly want to, you have to do the cost-benefit analysis, obviously, of the cost for the development, and then see if it makes sense to sell it right away. But people are thinking about that as a good way to, let's say, you're in your retirement age, right? And so you could build your ADU, rent it out for X number of years, and then eventually you could sell it as a condo itself or whatnot. So
That's interesting. Interesting.
I think when you're thinking of ADUs as investments, and if you are going to think of it as as additional income source, I personally, one of my first ADU actually was my own home. And so I do have experience with that and navigating the LA Housing Department's regulations. And my ADU is actually was converted from part of my main residence. And there are rent stabilization limitations also. So I think homeowners do need to do research on that front too.
If they're planning on renting it out.
Yeah, and things are
Yeah.
constantly changing, it feels.
Yes, they're
So,
changing very fast.
Yeah.
But what does seem to be clear is they might have made a teeny dent in the kind of how, affordability crisis or access to housing at something of a manageable rent, but it doesn't sound like it's really solved the problem. That's not been the role that they have fulfilled.
Okay, so this next one, super fun. For me personally, and I think you're going to enjoy it too, is it really worth saving iconic architecture or just an old but poor representation? I love this program. There were some hot takes in this one, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It was moderated by yours truly, featured Jamie Rummerfield of Jamie Rummerfield Interior Design, Chris Goddard of Goddard Design Group, Anthony Laney of Laney LA, Paul McLean of McLean Design, and William Hefner of Studio William Hefner. What makes architecture iconic? Is it the architect or builder or designer? Is it the neighborhood in which it resides? Is it the social value that happened in and around that particular property? Is there something else? In your opinion, what makes architecture iconic?
In my opinion, architecture is iconic notably based on, one, the architect, because it is architecture. Architecture is also art in some people's eyes. And when you have a notable or legendary, even there are architects titled master architects, that is important to take note that these exist and have to have a value put on that level of architecture. And I think to the everyday person, when you look at a house in a row and you don't know the difference, that's an issue right there that we have in our city, in Los Angeles, is the education in architecture and design is not in the general public. And so it's important to put a spotlight on that and bring awareness to that. And then also, yes, cultural heritage, cultural resource, maybe who did live there or what happened there is also notable when it comes to historic and iconic architecture.
I think when we talk about design, it gets a little confusing because no two people like the same thing, so it's hard to get anybody to agree on what's iconic. So I think for something to become iconic, a group of people all have to agree that this is special or means something, which is really hard, and that very seldom or very rarely happens in the design world. So when we're talking about these important properties around the world, it's a group of people or a mass of people that all agree that this is important historically, architecturally. I'm an interior designer, or from a design point. So I think what makes it iconic is that a mass or a group of people all agree that this is an important piece of work, because design is subjective, and that would be kind of my view on that.
You've got a great voice. When I think about the word icon, it comes from the Greek word ikon. It means image or representation. And originally that was used in a religious sense. It means like image bearer, or it could be some sort of representation that was almost sacred, right? And so I think the bar for iconic architecture is actually very high. It has to represent something incredibly special, hard to replace, has deep cultural value. I think that very few things meet that standard, in my opinion, but I think it's wonderful that we're having this conversation about that.
I couldn't agree with you guys more, but I would also add in, just from my own personal experience, the idea of context. So it's easier in an urban sense to think about that buildings can sometimes be part of an urban fabric, and that's not necessarily what we find here as much in our city. But I grew up in Ireland, and we have a beautiful Georgian city that people destroyed because they thought that buildings would be unsafe or not suitable to maintain. And we were lucky enough to do a project recently in San Francisco, which was one of the few houses that predates the earthquake by 3 years, and it had survived the earthquake. It did not survive the Army and Navy after the war came back, so the interior had been like stripped. But we felt it was really important to hang on to that project because of the context where it was in Pacific Heights and how it added value to that neighborhood. So that's just like a nuance on what you're all saying, you know, that it's not just, is it of iconic value because of the building itself, but what is it contributing to its neighborhood around it? There are many neighborhoods here, like where you work so much in Hancock Park, which, you know, it's the total sum of all the buildings is just as important as the individual.
Yeah, it's true. I'll just add on to that, I think. Yeah, but I think we're the fabric of the neighborhood. They speak of things being contributing members to that fabric or that neighborhood, where something can be architecturally not necessarily significant, but that it's part of that fabric and it's sympathetic to it and it contributes is important. For me, the iconic category I think of as being something that encompasses a piece of work that encompasses sort of the highlights or the sort of known quantities and stylistically of a well-known architect, right? It's a Paul Williams house. Well, it's got this thing, or it's Wallace Neff. It's got his proportion things. It's got this window relations and the type of detail. And to me, that makes things iconic. But I do agree things become, you know, that it has to do with the setting and the time. I think those also contribute to sort of iconic status, as do just the culture of it, you know, what was happening, who lived there, you know, all these things start to figure into it, and I think they all are part of that package. So,
I believe that anyone in or adjacent to our industry has the passion for design and architecture and loves what we do, and I think it's surprising to me when you have structures that are so representative in a community and then they're endangered. You have parts of the community who are up in arms and they're upset, and then you have people who just don't really seem to care much. I'll give you an example, and it's happening right now, and that is Price Tower in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. So I live in Tulsa, and last year I went out and I toured Price Tower. For those not familiar, Frank Lloyd Wright's one and only completed skyscraper. 20-story, beautiful building in the middle of Bartlesville, Oklahoma, which, by the way, it's a very sweet place, but it's exactly the type of city that it sounds like to you. And there's nothing else around it that is even remotely resemblant of what it is, or what. If Frank Lloyd Wright, middle of Oklahoma, a 20. So, a couple of years ago, it had not fared well, as most Frank Lloyd Wright projects do, and that's something I want your take on too, because it doesn't fare well. But it was sold for $10 and a commitment for $10 million to restore it. Can you restore a 20-story skyscraper for $10 million? No, you can't. So what they did was they started selling off artifacts. You'll find them on First Dibs. If you go, you'll find them. Original. My point is, as creatives, if you do something like that and someone comes in and your work is bastardized, it's taken apart, it's sold off, how does that affect you? I'm just curious, from a creator's perspective, and Paul, I'm going to start with you on this one. How does it affect you when, do you envision something when you make it like, this has the potential to be iconic in the future, or this is a representation of my work, and then when there's the threat, how do you feel about that, and how does that affect you as you envision your legacy?
That's a tough question. I mean, first of all, I don't really think of it being iconic. I mean, I'm trying to solve problems as I go, and hopefully maybe one day someone will like one of these houses, or one of my kids will insist that someone hang on to it. I think when I think about projects, though, I really do focus on, I'm an architect, obviously, and so I'm thinking about architecture. I'm talking about the relationship of light and space. So I can see where houses can kind of wear different dresses over time, and you hope that really when it moves on to new owner, you'll get a chance to talk to them, converse, and help them understand what we were trying to achieve. But my hope is that, you know, because we keep making all the regulations so strict now, that these houses that we're all building right now might stand the test of time, simply because, well, you can't build them anymore on those lots. So people will hopefully hang on to them. And I think beyond the iconic part, there's an intrinsic value in just like not taking down structures if possible. Because I think we have to really seriously consider that because of the environmental impact of demolishing things. I mean, although I spend my life designing new houses, you really have to think and weigh carefully if you want to get involved in a project. If there was something of intrinsic value on a lot, I'd rather keep it, and try and work with it as much as possible, versus just like, oh, there's another site, let's just tear it down, do something new. We just have to assess, there's a lot of not great buildings, and we have to acknowledge that, and that doesn't mean that our buildings are really that great, but we can try at least.
Fun, right? Okay, this next one is, it's a really good one. They're all really good. I say that about every single one of them, but I do love them, and I hope you do too. This one is connected versus unconnected, the future of home. Really, when you think about it, the future of connected versus unconnected is more important now than ever before, and doesn't just relate to electronics or technology, but also connecting with people. So this was really good. It was moderated by Erica Heat of Interiors Magazine. It was featuring Christy Nelson of KM Nelson Design, Adam Hunter of Adam Hunter Inc., Ginger Curtis of Urbanology Designs, and Jackie Searman of Jackie Searman Designs.
Very nice. So we're here today to talk about connecting, unconnecting, disconnecting, unplugging. I wouldn't mind unplugging for the next, 4 years or so, but that's a different story. Sorry. Okay. So let's get a temperature check on what your clients are looking for as far as home automation. Let's start with home automation. Like, what are they wanting? Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I would say that there's definitely a mix, and it's driven by, more than anything, I think, age range. My older clients, so, sort of 40 up, probably they want to be connected enough to, have the fun automation, but at the same time, they need their time away as well. So having space where they can go and completely disconnect is as important as having, the toys and what have you, but definitely not feeling like 24/7 they're connected.
When you say connected, are you talking about the automation of the house, or are you
Yes.
talking about being online?
Home automation.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that people, certainly in luxury, they want to be able to control their homes from their phones and make things as easy as possible. However, I'm sort of seeing a swing back to simpler and cleaner. People don't want as many buttons. I think they want to feel a little freer. They want to turn on the tactile moment of turning on a lamp and plugging in your floor and changing your mood and not having everything be a scene. I know that I'm personally just left my own home, which before that I sold, it was like a showroom as far as having a lighting designer, and everything was, and I want the opposite this time. I don't want any Crestron, any Josh AI, any Savant, nothing. I just want a lamp and turn it on.
I totally agree. I think it's sort of pivoting a little bit where it's not having technology just for the sake of having technology, and sort of asking, like, does this really enhance or improve, or is it one more thing? Is it something glowing or dinging or ringing or buzzing? What's happening with this technology? I will say where we see it impact in a really positive way is, and where our clients ask for it, is the automation of shades and curtains. And when you've got a huge home in Texas that's really expansive and you can't even reach the top, then that's a type of automation that I feel like our clients find very valuable.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, lighting as well, because it's a cost savings to have shades down. It reduces the temperature in your house, and as well as lighting, you can really reduce your impact and the amount of energy that you're using. So our clients aren't going with home systems as much anymore because they're seeing that technology is advancing so fast. Usually installing them is only going to last for the next 5 years. So they're going different routes where they're focusing on good lighting systems that are simple to use, cost-effective for the long term of the house, but then maybe investing in different technology such as, solar or recycling water or using different aspects of security that are technology-based.
Yeah, I agree with Christy. It also depends on the demographic of your client, but I think our job is to guide them to not be too much of the spectrum, like too much of technology or too much of not technology. It's just always good to be balanced. And like you said, Ginger, I used a lot of my clients wants everything like shades automation, like a lighting automation is super safe because if you're not in your house or you are abroad, you actually can control your house privacy with that. It's super important to have that. So many things that we can have it importantly on our house, but not everything is necessary.
It's kind of amazing from a security point of view. And so I imagine that your clients are concerned about security to a certain extent, especially like the super high profile folks that you work with. And so that must be a benefit. What I admire about technology is that it's largely hidden, and as well it should be. I mean, technology, screens, servers, they're not sexy, they're not editorial. We're constantly, frankly, getting rid of them, even little switches. We're just disappearing them for print and online. Are you finding yourselves having to work around? What are your thoughts on buttons and screens and such? How do you deal with them as designers?
Well, they have to be beautiful, and most of the time they're not, and so they're being edited out, and it's really a pain. But then we're seeing these fantastic companies like Forbes and Lomax who are introducing these really beautiful features with the toggle switch.
That's just what I was going to say.
Right?
My whole
what
house
an
is going to be that now.
experience.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
I just want to go by and just flip it because
You just want to touch it.
You want to touch it. You want to interact with it, and I think that's really, really meaningful. And so if it's not beautiful, we're complaining about it, right? That's why, what designer loves televisions? I mean, we're constantly trying to figure out, how do we hide these? How do we be creative? How do we...
I'm a TV
art?
addict, so like as
Okay,
a
come
TV
on.
person, I'm obsessed, but you're right, they're not pretty to
Not
look
pretty.
at. I think the Samsung TV, which people are actually, now the picture frame that people are, it's such a less expensive piece than they were putting in rooms, but they're so much prettier. You know what I mean? I know it's pretty basic, but it's pretty easy. But I actually love luxury technologies. I think Bang & Olufsen inspired me when I was growing up in the 80s, and I think there's ways, and this sort of makes the case of, I made a marble iPhone dock many years ago when the iPhone came out, because I thought this is going to be in our lives. How can we make it reside somewhere beautifully? So I do think there's that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's again a balance. Like it's either hidden in this sense. I just want it to be hidden, or if it's outside, it has to be decorative and thoughtful. It has to be planned. It has to be intentional.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not gonna go with the room or the designs that we're
It's just
working on.
Yeah, it's as bad or worse than if it were just there and acknowledge that it's there. I mean, to your point about the television components where you can have the frame and the art, I mean, a lot of it is so ugly that I would rather just have the television there and,
I agree with that. Unless you make your frame, I agree with you.
Exactly.
I mean, but there's also the thought of what's happening in the future with augmented reality, where TVs won't even exist because it'll be in your glasses.
Yeah. So I have this project that
Crazy.
I put a TV on the ceiling because the bed is facing the Atlantic. So I just hide the TV, and then it comes out when it's needed. So you still have your view, and you don't see the the TV there.
And
so
we've done that. I still like to do screens that are hidden in mirrors, because then if you're having a meeting or you're doing something on Zoom and you can just project it onto, from the mirror, it looks great. It's totally concealed otherwise. And the clarity of the picture is pretty extraordinary. So, depending on the quality.
Do you see yourself in the mirror as you watch it, though?
No.
Oh, good, because I would not like that.
Over the
They're
whole,
both.
It takes over
Oh
the
my
whole
God.
thing. So it's really,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So, the great outdoors, reimagining California's love for outdoor living. Love this, hope you do too, moderated by yours truly, featuring John Feldman of Ecocentric's Landscape Architecture, Sam Toole of the AZEC Company, Eric Peterson of PHX Architecture, Scott Specht of Specht Novak, and Dustin Moore of Strata Landscape Architecture. How does the environment, the different environments, the different ecosystems and climates affect the manner in which you design?
Well, everything, we could have done the house across the street, and then, a month later, we get the house next door. Everything is an individual study. We take nothing for granted. The codes can change. There's elements. Certainly, the client's wish list and the budgets could have that much disparity between them. But when we're talking about things that are different climates, and we worked with Moya on the next one as well. Those were challenging. Outdoor kitchens in 120-degree summers. Now nobody's probably cooking in 120 degrees. They're cooking at 105 degrees indoors. But everything is an individual study. So the plant palettes were entirely new to us. We knew the style. We knew what we were after. We knew the aesthetic that we were excited to dive into. But from the paving materials to all the environmental factors that would influence otherwise good design could be disastrous. And we know of some of those projects from some LA designers that went out there and designed, and they got their handed to them. It was brutal. Total loss of materials. And we're just we're talking softscape, but even the hardscape materials, and knowing those products and shopping locally and understanding what product comes out of the earth the closest, and those environmental impacts. Those are all really important. I mean, that's really shorting this answer, but I've got brethren here sitting next to me.
Yeah, and Dustin, it's interesting too, because the project that I'm talking to John about was vast. Being in Northern California, Southern California too, in the beach communities, we're limited at times. I mean, sometimes you'll have a multi-million-dollar project on a postage stamp for a lot, and you have to really dig deep to be creative, but you also have an opportunity there. How does that impact your work?
Well, I mean, the different scales, we're going to approach it differently. Like, we do some work in San Francisco where, gardens half the size of this space. And then we also have a 1,000-acre ranch in Sunol. And kind of what you were saying, like, you have to approach every project with, especially materiality,
You have to approach it in a different way. Like when we work in San Francisco, we'll use porcelain. We'll use materials that we know they're going to be ultra durable. But once we get down to like close to San Jose, Los Gatos, we know that those paving materials are going to get 150 degrees in the sun. So we know better to use those. So at that time, we're using like high density limestones that don't capture heat, that are still very durable. And kind of like you're saying with the softscape materials, like the Bay Area, I mean, there are more microclimates in the Bay Area than almost anywhere in the world. And adjusting your plant palette for what's going to grow in San Francisco, you go 5 miles away and they're going to burn or they're going to get killed by frost. It's a phenomenal difference in those areas.
And Eric, it's interesting because for you, what I wanted to do, and I love this sort of yin and yang where we've got the landscape architects sitting next to the architects who, I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of conflict between the indoors and the outdoors. And while it's not necessarily about the conflict, I think the approach is the same. And you two, we've had this conversation, whether you're building in Beverly Hills is different than building in, on a golf course in Phoenix.
Right. So the sun angles and like in Scottsdale, we're trying to protect ourselves constantly from the sun. It's really intense, and so we do want to still have that indoor-outdoor relationship, but we have to give big, deep covered overhangs, which removes the landscape further away from the house. So we like to say, well, we want to see that, having that blend with glass going down to the floor and landscape materials. So we just have to look at it in different ways, maybe doing it on the north side of the house, which then affects the type of plant material you could have. But the traditional way in Scottsdale was all the homes were like courtyard homes. So you had a microclimate on the interior of the house that created a cooler area and the plants could grow, and then you'd have all the natural light in. But you'd have a different scenario for California where we don't need all that overhang. You want the sun to come in and warm you up on days like today. And so then you approach things differently. We use darker colors in Arizona because that's more of the material nature, darker stones, darker plant material, and then here we do lighter colors. So it's just using that materiality and doing a house that's made regionally that feels like it belongs in that space, rather than just doing like a white house anywhere. It just doesn't make sense to do things like that in places like Arizona.
And Scott, you and I, when you were on the show, we were talking about one of your projects. I find Austin to be very much like California at times, except you've got all of it in a very small period of time. It's very hot, it's very cold. The topography in certain places, like the one house that we were discussing that's overlooking the lake, that I think just has an impossible elevation. But again, creative thinkers find creative ways to do amazing things.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you first mentioned about things are developed in California and provide images that clients all over the country see. So we get all the time people bringing us magazines of houses in California with giant glass walls that slide open, and it's like, we want to live indoor, outdoors, we want to be able to go. And in Austin, there's literally 3 days a year you can do that. But we have, most of our clients are so insistent on it. We put them in, we're like, you're never going to open this, ever. And it's true. So what we try to talk them into is do fixed glass here and do one door that you go in and out, and it'll work for you just fine. You'll get all the ventilation you need. You'll save a lot of money. It's more energy efficient for you. It's hard to get people around that, though. So I blame California for a lot of problems elsewhere. But yeah, it's great. It's doing houses in the Northeast, you run into an inverse problem of a lot of things will grow there that people in the South want, and in Austin, you have like 4 plants that will grow, literally, and you use those same 4 over and over. So we see this mixing of imagery and things from clients, and have to really explain to them and talk to them about what you're looking for and try to find creative ways to use it with the materials that are appropriate for that location.
And a lot of people blame California for a lot of things. It's true. But Sam, so it's funny, right? Because hearing this, you get 4 different perspectives. We're talking about the same thing, but you could hear these 4 different perspectives and think we were talking about 4 different topics.
Right.
How does a company like yours find a way to provide each of these creatives, every creative really, with the types of products and materials that allow them to do things that, to be honest with you, push the boundaries of traditional materials that maybe couldn't stand up performatively to projects like this.
Right. Well, the fact is people want to live outdoors. And if you want to live outdoors, you want to live outdoors in a beautiful way that supports the design integrity, the design vision for your entire house. There are spaces for your family to enjoy. There are places that you're investing in for the long term. And yet, by virtue of the fact that you're outdoors, it's really challenging. It's challenging for plants. It's challenging for materials to stand up, to be low maintenance, to have the longevity that you need, to have the other sort of characteristics that make it suitable for the outdoors. So the AZEC company is all about creating products that replace wood in the outside of the home so that it lasts longer. Wood just doesn't last. It just plain old doesn't in the elements. It rots, it warps, it splinters, it's hard to take care of, it's all these things. So it's thrilling to work with architects of this caliber, right, and understand all their needs. We have teams of material scientists, we have product innovators and designers that all they do is spend time thinking about how to create products that look like wood, that really replicate or that mimic the look of natural hardwoods. I should be talking to you, I'm talking to Josh. In the outside of a home, and this is really challenging to do. It's decades of research and work, and it's a lot of, in the details of trying to cater, to your point, what we're doing to the needs of the designers that are using our product. Whether that's different colors, different textures, different widths, different characteristics, all that stuff. But ultimately, it's all about creating materials that are suitable and sustainable in the outside of a home.
Wrapping it up is, and this is so good, the intelligent kitchen. How technological advancements create a higher quality of life. This is moderated by Izzy Gonzalez of Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, featuring Mark Cutler and Nicole Schultz of Cutler Schultz, Jess Jones of Jess Jones Design Group, Rachel Grokowski of RHG Architecture and Design, and Carrie Kelly of Carrie Kelly Studio.
I would love for each of you to share, what does intelligent kitchen mean to you? What does intelligent kitchen mean to you? And we can go in the same order. We'll start with you, Mark.
I mean, without trying to sound evasive, I think what an intelligent kitchen means to different people are two totally different things. For example, let me give you two examples. We do a lot of work up in Silicon Valley. And although that's a very special use case, the client we find up there wants every bell and whistle. They want a part of their kitchen to give them a Benihana experience. They want a thing over here to give them an Italian pasta cooking experience. Everything that to sort of basically scratch their back when they walk into the kitchen, they want it. Whereas in parts of Bel Air, for instance, in Beverly Hills, where we're doing a big project, those clients, they know how they live already. Their kids are basically out of the house. They've been cooking in their kitchens for 20, 30 years. They don't necessarily need the kitchen, the oven to buzz when the pot roast is ready or when this is ready. They want something that's going to be easy to clean, easy to operate, something that functions well. And to them, that's what an intelligent kitchen is. For others, it's something that's much more technology-driven. And so the Intelligente that you speak of is very much about responding to the way our clients live. We talk about interior design as a form of portraiture, about creating homes that look like the people who live in them. And I think an intelligent kitchen is really just an extension of that.
I love that. It means different things to different people, right? Awesome.
I definitely concur with that. It depends. But, as I mentioned, we are often approaching design as a wellness modality, and so a lot of our clients come to us for that. We're looking at intelligent kitchen as, how can it help them cook healthy foods? How can it help them preserve their foods? Integrating things for easeful living, like faucets that are cold, hot, and bubbly water. Like, maybe it's, drawer refrigeration for their kids' snacks. So how can they be present when they're in the kitchen to cook the foods the way they want them to taste in an easeful way in a short amount of time, And then we have other clients who also, their kitchen is supposed to be their showpiece. They don't really cook except for a holiday. And those times too, we want the kitchen to be able to support them in the idea that cooking is also a ritual. So how can we integrate technology for those moments? And that's often a little bit different. A lot of times that's concealing small appliances. It's the hidden pantry, and some of those things. Or from a technology standpoint, when do I need to change the filter on my refrigerator?
I love that. A holistic approach to the moments that matter the most. That's awesome.
When I think of an intelligent kitchen, you think of different things, right? So when we were learning back in school, it was all about the triangle in the kitchen, right? And that's evolved tremendously over years and time. And now everything is so tech savvy. And so when it comes to our clients, when it comes to our clients, I'm seeing a lot of different asks, as simple as having just function, right? And then when you start to introduce some of these intelligent kitchens, depending on who the client is, whether if they're giving you a little bit of pushback or not, right? Because of everything so techy, and they're afraid of malfunctioning, right? So I get a lot of that right now, the scare. They're a little bit fearful of all of the technology that's being put at them on the daily, right? From our cars, our cell phones, everything that we touch is technically advanced these days. So I don't get a whole lot of ask right now for it, except for the younger generations. So I'm learning a little bit more about who is going to be more and more familiar. But when it comes to, when I first heard this question, I was thinking back from when I was in school, learning about kitchens, learning about how to design a kitchen, and what all had to go into that kitchen to make it function, right? And I think that still is all relevant today, but now with the technology, with the advancement, with everything that we have access to, as in functionality, whether it's surfaces, faucets, appliances, cabinets, drawer pulls, everything is so state-of-the-art that it helps us to already create an intelligent kitchen. I think that's like the easy answer, right? Is how we learned in school, and then now it's just about upgrading and going into the technology and bringing that into the home and
Awesome.
educating the client on that.
Very well. Thank you for taking us on that journey. I think what problem is it solving is what I hear you say with functionality. There's a lot of curiosity, but also a lot of anxiety to make sure it works as intended. Carrie?
I think it's about creating a space that supports a lifestyle, and that's different for everybody. And you talked about being a luxury designer. I think part of the luxury is having something available to you before you even know you needed it.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And as you move through a space and you work with your clients and interview them to see what is their lifestyle truly like, being able to offer those products, again, that support that lifestyle, and how do they move through a space? Is that a touchless faucet because they're busy parents with chicken in one hand and who knows what else in the other hand, and they need to be able to tap that faucet to have it turn on? Maybe. Even charging solutions in the countertop where everyone sits up at the bar and is watching the cook do their thing, but their phones are turned down and they're charging through the countertop. And even things that help with the success of what we're doing, whether it's just the Thanksgiving dinner, it's the everyday meal, having your phone go off to alert you that when the meal is truly ready. So I think it is different for everyone, and really understanding the client and their needs and how they live in their homes, that we can support their lifestyle in the best way possible.
Can we stay there for one more moment? How do you discover those? Because I love that. How do you discover the unmet needs?
I think it's really through the interview process. I mean, as designers, the value that we bring to the table is taking the time to sit and interview our client and to understand what the needs are for everyone in the home. And that's from, the 2-year-old to the 102-year-old that may be living with you, who knows, and the people that come and visit your home as well. I think as we think about hosting people and that sort of thing, having an island that has an ice maker on the end of it that people can come scoop the ice and make their own drink. I'm not the only host in the building. It becomes very interactive, and I know as we talk about this, we're talking about that central kitchen in your house, the heart of the home, but also it extends to our outdoor spaces. We're here in beautiful California where, guess what? We get to blur that line, and tonight we may have an alfresco dinner. So what does my outdoor kitchen look like, and how does that support what we do and the celebrations and the gatherings that we have in our home?
Thank you. Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said here, so I feel like I'm just going to kind of repackage that a little bit. But I think it's really about knowing what our clients value. So knowing your client, knowing what they value. We don't want to just stock a kitchen with all the bells and whistles, because if they have a coffee maker that makes 250 different kinds of cappuccino or whatever, and they don't really use it, it's not of use or value to them. So it's really about finding out, do they value having an oven that's intuitive and, can adjust roasting times based on, the size of the dish that's inside the oven, and do they want a dishwasher that, automatically senses how soiled the dishes are and adjusts water temperature and detergent used and things like that. We find, for the most part, our clients, this might be their second, maybe third kitchen. They know how they live. They know how they like to cook. They know how they like to use their kitchen, and we want to provide a kitchen that enhances that and is of value to them for the long run. Yeah, we want them to use it.
So there you go. You got to hear and see a little bit of what happened at WestEdge Design Fair 2024 for WestEdge Wednesdays. Every week, every Wednesday, we're going to drop a new video of these panels in their entirety, all 9 of them, so you can check them all out and come back over and over again. They're great. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you again to Julie Berline for her amazing stage design. And thank you to Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, for presenting the theater at the 2024 WestEdge Design Fair. Thanks for watching. And also, make sure that you're subscribing to Convo by Design. The podcast features a new episode, at least one episode every single week, featuring great stories like this and more. Thanks for watching.